So I guess I'll start. So I'm Derek Peterson, the CTO for Boingo Wireless. We're a neutral host provider, providing Wi-Fi at airports that a lot of people know about, but also cellular at many of those same airports. We've been deploying licensed and unlicensed technologies in venues for many years, and we're looking forward to deploying CBRS lines or 3.5 in a lot of those same locations. We announced about a few weeks ago, about a month ago, that we have a trial going on in Dallas Love Field right now, and I'm helping lead the deployment and an operations work group with Piyush, and so that's a new group in the CBRS Alliance focused on deployment and operations of CBRS installations.
Hope it was wireless. My name is Tormod Larsen. I'm the CTO for Extenet Systems. We're the largest independent owner-operator of what we call distributed networks. Started out being DAS networks, then we've been deploying a lot of small cells and also Wi-Fi networks, indoor and outdoor, throughout the US. We're very excited about CBRS. We think that open up a lot of opportunities to also address some opportunities in the marketplace that we haven't been able to do in the past. Kind of having that combination of being in between the traditional license band and the unlicensed band. And excited to be on this panel. Thank you.
I'm Piyush Raj. I'm the Director of Technology Innovation for American Tower. American Tower is the largest operator of neutral host infrastructure for indoor and outdoor. We are working very closely on deploying, looking at CBRS as the platform to deploy vast neutral host infrastructure inside the building, where we have deployed other neutral host products. So this is something we are doing some testing and trial at some of the venues where we have DAS infrastructure.
Good afternoon. My name is Murat Erkam. I'm a member of Crown Castle's corporate development and strategy team. Crown Castle is one of the largest real estate investment trusts in the United States, with a portfolio of about 40,000 towers, macro towers, 60,000 miles of dense metropolitan fiber, and 60,000 outdoor small cell sites. Clearly, we have assets that we can leverage for newer technologies, newer bands becoming available, and one of the tasks we have is to find ways to leverage those assets. So that's why we're interested in CBRS.
Okay, so the topic for today is managed services, and I have a feeling that term means something different to everybody. So, I think maybe the first thing we should talk about is, what are the business models that you guys see coming in with on-go technology? How do you see that playing out for your company, and what are the interesting business models that you see growing here?
So I guess I'll start. So, our strategy is pretty simple, and it hasn't changed a lot. And this on-go or CBRS just feeds into what we've been doing for many years. Our strategy is very simple. We go to areas which have connectivity issues, and then we end up trying to solve those for them. And in the past, we've used both licensed and unlicensed connectivity to solve those, whether it's Wi-Fi or cellular. What CBRS allows us to do is be able to take the shared license and actually expand. We have a lot of venues where we're waiting on opportunities with carriers to bring in licensed LTE into the venues. And the way it works is we want to get that connectivity established as quickly as possible. And so by being able to take advantage of shared spectrum and being able to deploy a system in that spectrum, we can end up providing that connectivity a lot quicker in certain situations. And in other situations, the economics just don't make sense for a large DAS system. And so by being able to share spectrum and be able to deploy once and share different models of sharing there, you can end up still meeting the needs of the carriers as well as the venue in even some of these markets which are underserved or need that additional capacity.
Yeah, I think, to some extent it's similar to what we've done, deploying small cell and DAS networks. But we also see the customer segments changing, where it's new customers in those areas. So for example, in building, providing services to a enterprise versus serving a carrier in the past. So about your question about being a service provider or a master service provider, now we need to take it a little bit further in terms of the type of services that we provide. And to some extent, being a neutral host, traditionally, we're looking for needs from multiple carriers in the same physical space. Now we could actually create a business model of a customer that need multiple services in the same space, and then scaling more from doing a lot of different buildings or areas with those type of services. So, if you take kind of what's been done in the IT industry, where you look at scaling based on more centralized infrastructure and cloud infrastructure, those are the type of things that we've been looking at and adding to what we're doing, and we've done some acquisitions lately to add to that skill set as well.
Yeah, so if you look at our business model, it's a twofold business model. We work very closely with the property owner, and at the same time, we work very closely with the carriers. Both are our customers. In our current scenario, we deploy new flows infrastructure for the property funded by the operators. Where we see with Boingo is how we can actually merge the needs of property owner and the operators in a common infrastructure. We see that obviously property owners also have needs just beyond voice and data communication that goes to Internet of Things, smart building, other products, which requires a robust infrastructure. So we see where the business model is going is how now instead of just carriers as being the tenant, now you also have property owners as a part of that sharing that infrastructure. I think that allows what we can, and plus, I think right now we are only addressing a 2% of the total market because the DAS and small cells are mainly catered towards the top segment of the market. But the lower market, because of the cost constraint, is not being addressed. So this allows us to expand into that market.
You're saying you're addressing the top 2% of the largest buildings.
Yeah.
Those are the ones where you can get the attention of the operators to do something.
Exactly.
But now we know that lots of small building owners want to get involved too. They can't get the attention of the operators, but in this scenario, they can actually do something.
Yes.
So as a real estate investment trust, we do provide shared infrastructure to our customers and lease access to this infrastructure. But we also have a fiber division, which we have, where we provide managed services to end users, especially large enterprises. So we believe that with CBRS, since the barrier to entry for a wireless network has been lowered, there will be additional customers that we might have to merge our fiber business model with our traditional wireless business model. So that requires a change, and that's why we're close. We've been members of the CBRS Alliance and following it very closely.
Okay, so Murat, how does that change the way you set up your company to address the market? What do you have to do in your operations differently?
I don't think it has. It's a change in terms of the people we have or the operations we have, but it's the way we sign our contracts, negotiate what we can deliver based on service level agreements, and also legally what we can classify as readable or not.
Okay, I'm wondering, for some of the other neutral hosts, I mean, it seems to me with Boingo, you're going into one more step into the network, right? You have to start to mirror the core network of the mobile operators to authenticate and things like this. So, Tormod, do you have any comments on how you would set up your company to really address that sort of opportunity?
Yeah, we actually for quite some time been seeing this as an opportunity, and we've been changing. We have been adding both skill sets and capabilities to our company, both from a network operations perspective. But you also mentioned, the core networking and all of that becoming part of the infrastructure we provide, which is different than fiber and RAN infrastructure. We also anticipate, because we're dealing with customers that might not be as familiar with, obviously, with LTE technology, that is a much more demand from a customer service perspective. So all of those type of things is something that we've been working on for quite some time. We have about close to 1,000 sites that are CBRS ready, that's under construction right now. And we've also been doing other stuff in the background to hone our skills and making sure that we are ready for these type of deployments, which is very different from a more traditional neutral host.
Yeah, I guess I'm also wondering, because in the past, all four of your businesses have been dealing with the big gorillas. These are giant mobile operator companies and giant building owners that you're dealing with. But now it's a much larger market of smaller players. And how does that change the profitability and the business model for you from that point of view?
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit. But one of the things we've been doing this for a long time, Wi-Fi and CBRS kind of fit hand in hand. It's a lot of the deployment aspects of it are going to be very similar. You're dealing with 2.4 and you're dealing with 5, and now you're dealing with 3.5, and you still have a core with Wi-Fi. Now I have a core with cellular, and that's a lot of the pieces are the same, different names, a little bit of different technology, but a lot of us have been deploying both of them for a long time. So the real trick there is really grasping towards virtualization and recognizing that you've got to take advantage of all the new technology. So a virtualized core is something that I've been talking about, and some people probably seen for a long time. That's very important that you need to establish so that you can grow and shrink. And sometimes you're going to have that core at the edge, and sometimes you're going to have that more piece of that core in the cloud. And by being able to be adaptive like that, you can end up adjusting for the different sizes. I mean, we have some airports that are real small, where we've had Wi-Fi, and some that are large, and so you'd have a different size core or a different way of tracking and attacking those, where you'd move some of those different functions, the virtual network functions, to different parts of your overall core. And so we're doing the same thing here with the CBRS. We have both a virtual core, and we have a low data center core, and we have a cloud core, and we're really just taking advantage of all of that technology that we've built to be able to go at the high level where you need it closer, or down to the lower levels where you might want it smaller and in a private LTE sense at that level. So it's really important.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it from a business perspective. Obviously, it changes. We've been dealing with large, very creditworthy customers, and now you start looking at everything from small enterprises to various type of building owners and maybe smaller type of companies. So that's certainly something that we're looking really closely at and making sure that it fit into our financial modeling and how we deal with that, both from a investment perspective and also, like Derek mentioned, technology-wise, that we are not as heavily invested in a particular customer to provide a service. So it clearly changing, but the good news is we are not limited to 3 or 4 customers based on how things are panning out. So we were able to round off that core set of customers. And in the indoor side, obviously you have large commercial real estate trusts that are very well funded and good credit history and all that as well. So those are a good add-on to the customer base from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it is definitely for us moving up the value stack when you talk about providing service with Boingo. And as I said, that property owners need, along with merging those two, requires you to have a different approach that we had before. I think from the operations perspective, we still leverage our existing 24/7 NOC that we had for DAS and tower monitoring. From the perspective of offering more value to these property owners is making sure that you give them visibility to all the network statistics and KPIs and all that, which is very different, and because most operators are all set up to do that. But now with property owners, you need to provide all that information. So we have been definitely looking at all that. And also providing not just Boingo, but also category Wi-Fi, other services within the building for them so that you can utilize the same infrastructure. So it's definitely a shift in the business operations.
So on our small cell business, it's true that it's almost exclusively on the outdoor side. The customer base is the 4 carriers. However, we do have a significant venue presence, whether it's hospitality or sports entertainment or university or college campuses, where there are existing relationships with those venue owners, which can be leveraged for CBRS. And our tower business, just like American Tower, has an emerging tech business where it's not just the 4 carriers that use the space on the towers. Anybody who wants to put up a fixed wireless network or a broadcast network and or low power wide area communication network utilize those towers. On top of that, our fiber business has access to a lot of data centers, including a few around where we are right now, and hundreds of thousands of enterprise customers. So we do believe, again, yes, it's different, but it's not too different. So the key is leveraging the assets, and I think as long as they're put together in the right package, then different types of customers that will be enabled to CBRS can be met by companies like ourselves.
Right. Okay. We're going to open up to questions in a minute, so think about your questions while we talk about vertical markets. You know, I'm interested to get your feedback as, you know, you guys are starting to interface with a lot of different vertical markets and different enterprises. Which areas do you see as kind of the hot areas that are going to grow the fastest using on-go technology?
I'll start. All can take it in.
I happen to start. I think you need to kind of look at it in a time perspective, because early on right now, as Gordon mentioned earlier, you know, the availability of devices is very limited. So initially, it's more kind of private LTE or fixed wireless type deployment. So early on, and we heard a little bit earlier here about fixed wireless, I think, you know, that's a pretty easy transition. They're already deploying LTE. Now it's just getting additional spectrum. So that's what we will see quite a bit of activity here really early on. But we also see it in other industries like sports and entertainment, where they have specific needs, very often media-rich type applications that they want to run and control. So that's another one. You have some industrial IoT type applications as well. But over time, you know, commercial real estate, hospitality, all of kind of the traditional verticals, healthcare, and also we're actually involved in right now some educational connectivity as well for different type of educational institutions. So I think you'll see the whole gamut, but early on it will be somewhat limited by the devices, and then it will grow from there.
I think if you look at on-go, what is going to be the market seeder? I think how do we seed the market? I think one of the things I see is that you have Wi-Fi networks. There are some robust Wi-Fi networks that needs improvement, which is good for providing guest connectivity. But then you have other applications, particularly building operations, facilities management, or even like push-to-talk kind of services, non-BYOD. I think that's where I see on-goes making the biggest impact in the first 12 months. And which market I see, I think that multi-tenant unit or enterprises has a very big potential. They have been the underserved market because there has been no product like that to offer that in that market. And I see then is obviously going to move into residential and maybe into hospitality, healthcare. But I see that it should not be limited too much by devices. There are a lot of applications which runs on wireless. One of them is cameras. I mean, there are hundreds of cameras in the public venues, and they run on wired connectivity. That's again fixed wireless application to replace them with wireless. So I think there are areas where it's going to hit first, but as we said, it's all going to be dependent upon what devices or what these end-user devices, what applications comes out first.
I think it's been said before, I agree with what we heard earlier today and what you just heard on the panel. The device, the flagship smartphone availability or unavailability, if you want to call it, and their adoption rate is going to determine the traditional consumer-based wireless services. So putting that aside, and it'll come, it'll have to be a closed environment in terms of a private LTE. Maybe closed is not the right word, but you have a control of the devices that you can leverage by programming the SIMs and making those devices available to the end users of it. And we think that the ones that will address the biggest pain points could be things like industrial IoT and manufacturing in terms of asset tracking, and or again, private LTE type networks, whether they're fixed or mobility based, to provide internet or data access to their end users.
All right, so I'll go last. I think one of the key things is there's a digital transformation happening across all industries and across all verticals. And part of that digital transformation has been limited by the ability of the technology to be able to perform that digital transformation. So it was, hey, let's put up unlicensed Wi-Fi and deal with the interference and the other things that come up with as more and more people try to take advantage of unlicensed in that digital transformation. Or I've got to work with a licensed carrier to be able to make that digital transformation and try to figure out how to do that while they're also trying to take care of their own businesses, you know, in bringing up that. So the digital transformation is going to happen, I think, and we're going to see a huge innovation cycle by being able to free LTE for more transformation to happen. I think retail is a great example right now. In a retail venue, you want to be able to provide concierge services to be able to bring people back in to your stores to be able to buy stuff. And you want to be able to walk around with them and provide them the opportunity to say, okay, let me check you out here and have that concierge service instead of having to walk up to a counter and, you know, bring out all your stuff and, you know, pull it off the shelf or out of the basket to be able to buy it when you've already pulled it off of the shelf. Why do you have to do that? So being able to create a secure way for you to be able to grab something off the shelf, scan it once, put it in your basket and walk out, those are great opportunities, and I think that transformation has been trying to come for a long time. And I think when we start looking at additional transformations in hospitals and other locations where they've been hampered by that ability, you're going to see a lot of opportunity there for re-innovation of transformation that we haven't been able to do because we've been kind of locked to either unlicensed or which had the interference kind of issues or multiple people doing it, or the licensed where you'd have a very high cost to be able to be a part of it.
I think another area which I feel Boingo is like an HOV lane right now for the enterprise, where you get a clean signal, where you can put all the mission critical applications which has to go fast, unless and until the HOV lane gets crowded. But right now it's like an HOV lane, a clean HOV lane that you can go. I also think that what we are building on the CBRS Alliance and the deployment and operations work group is we started putting whatever the ecosystem is out there. And we were surprised that there are a lot of devices out there. It's not that you cannot get started. There is other things out there. It's just that how they get productized, what applications come out. And I correlate that to back in the days when LTE was launched and when EVDO or 3G was launched, the first devices were dongles. And for 1 year, if you forget, you were running on dongles. And then smartphones hooked up. I think the same transitions we'll see in ongoing.
Actually, I was surprised to hear you say that IoT may be one of the first ones, industrial IoT and those things, because most people have never focused on that first. But in the enterprise case, that's one of the most compelling arguments, right?
But then they have Wi-Fi. So again, if the purpose is data access, we're not necessarily solving the problem by adding CBRS into the enterprise. I think we heard before the important aspects of the security and the low latency applications, and that's still requiring investment in technology and in infrastructure assets to be able to enable those.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience about managed services? Down the middle aisle.
So, do you expect to get that on?
So, do
do you expect to get competition from, in a couple of years, from people just being able to go down to a Best Buy and pick up a Cisco router that has, or a Cisco access point that basically has Wi-Fi and CBRS on it or OnGo? I mean, does that not eat in a little bit to the managed services sector?
Maybe a little bit to what you touched on in your question here. On the Wi-Fi, you kind of, had that for a long time, and I think it's a clearly definition or defining line between kind of more of the residential or, lower quality Wi-Fi, if you want, versus what's deployed by a managed service provider. And I think that gap is even bigger when it comes to OnGo because of the LTE technology, some of the requirements there. And honestly, I don't think even enterprises would see the value of a OnGo network right out of the gate. I think it's more a building owner that would see it and say, okay, I could deploy an OnGo network in my building, doing building management systems, those type of things, and actually that's a good way of not stepping on my tenant, which is my revenue source. So they could do Wi-Fi and do their traditional connectivity, and then over time potentially be able to provide some of those higher value solutions over a OnGo network. And I don't see it being going kind of to the consumer route that quickly, and at least not competing with the service, because just having the equipment there is not going to provide you the service. It is all of those other elements to do that that kind of get it to that next level of a service that we talked about here and the opportunities that we see.
I'll just add to that, one of the key things that a managed service provider provides is managing the service. And that means making sure that it's running correctly, but also understanding how to make changes. So, today CBRS is 3.5. Hopefully we're not going to stop there at 150 megahertz of spectrum. We're going to need more, right? And we're going to need 5G, and we're going to be working on that in the CBRS Alliance. And we're going to need, Wi-Fi. We're going to need this convergence of all of this technology. And as you start blending all of that technology and you start slicing and dicing and making sure that you're getting every application and every user the appropriate kind of connection that they need, it really requires that management part of the service, and that is how you get to higher quality and better solutions. And so the other thing that's happening when we start talking about apartments and the urbanization of America is that we're starting to see people get more and more in urban areas, and as they move towards these urban areas, we need to have solutions that are managed, because you have a lot of people trying to use a lot of those services close by each other, and you want to have it managed so it works better. Otherwise, if it's unmanaged, it starts getting real chaotic and everybody's fighting for the frequency. And so you want to be able to balance that. So managed services are going to end up being more and more important over the future as we start seeing more movement towards urbanization that's just happening, across the globe.
So maybe another point to, your point about buying, the access point or small cell at Best Buy, that need to connect to something, right, to get the service. So it might even be a managed services opportunity to serve those devices that are basically almost like crowdsourcing, right? So now you're ending up with a footprint out there that is deployed, if you want, from a hardware perspective by multiple different entities or individuals. But to make that a service, it's that's where you mentioned virtualization, cloud-based services, all of that is part of that managed service, and that's kind of where the IT industry have headed, and I think that's what we're going to see, some of the conversion we're seeing here as well. So I don't see those as actually being competing. I think it might be more complementary.
I think it goes back to vertical markets, right? Let's say a restaurant owner or a small medium business who doesn't care about the quality of service, who doesn't really need that quality of service. Yes, they can go and buy it from Best Buy. They can do it now even with femtocells, which is But if it comes to larger enterprises who really care about quality of service and they have business operations that rely on this network and they can't afford to get it down, let it down by even an hour, and they also need regular software upgrades, they also need to see the roadmap, technology roadmap to 5G. For them, just to rely on managed services. But for small, medium business, other segments, small segments, they might still go to Best Buy and buy a femto. So I think that market is going to be big too, like it is right now.
I think my panelist friends answered the question pretty thoroughly, and it's a residential example anyway. But I want to take the opportunity to talk about the fact that the managed service provider definition is not one that encompasses all, because the network, as it was pointed out before, has to connect to something. So somebody has to manage the infrastructure, whether it's the radio piece or the interconnectivity. Then the network elements that connect to that network have to be authenticated, and the manager of that authentication has to be, or the access has to be managed. There needs to be a core network, as Tormod pointed out earlier before, that needs to be in place so that all this packet data gateway, service gateway, and the authentication functionalities exist, and a handoff to a local internet exists. And finally, there needs to be management of the subscriber. So all four of these can be done by a single entity or multiple entities. So as a result, it's not just one serves all, depending on the use case. Any one of us could be playing any one of those or all of those roles.
Okay, one fast question for you, and just a quick 60-second response. If you had to give some guidance to the CBRS Alliance on what technology issues to work on next, you know, what guidance would you give the group, you know, as far as what you think would make the market grow fastest? Anybody want to go first?
Wow, making the market grow fastest. I think we need to keep working with the FCC and get some of these roadblocks out of our way. I mean, I think they're doing a great job. I applaud them, but I think we're still waiting for some quite important things, and so we just need to keep the pressure on to get that roadblock out of our way.
I think, you know, like Derek said, I think we're not there yet. We're getting there. I think what Gordon mentioned earlier as well, you know, things kind of keep evolving, and so 5G and all that need to be part of it. Obviously, additional spectrum is important as well. And then, you know, since this kind of not be as a consistent type of deployments that we've seen in the past, where it's like, you know, we're going to do a 4G nationwide rollout, we're going to see very different type of networks with different kind of purposes. So maybe not try to over-standardize things, right? You know, get the key elements in place, and then how do we get them out there and get some experience, and then maybe feed that back rather than try to make it perfect out of the gate.
I think it's two things: is ecosystem development and having a roadmap to 5G. Those are very critical. As I said, right now, as I said, we need to broaden that ecosystem so that we can have more applications, and also getting the roadmap to 5G.
5G is a no-brainer, but I want to add the fact that the 3.7 to 4.2 also being an additional shared spectrum band would be immensely beneficial.
Okay. Let's have a big round of applause for the panel.